at the scene, and the government has paid tribute to a 37-year-old firefighter, just one of a number who died tackling the flames today. At least 279 people are understood to still be missing, with fears that some residents may still be trapped inside. Those are your Budget Day headlines. I'll be back with you for a full roundup at 7 o'clock. Now, though, it is over to Michelle and the panel.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are. Online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Thank you very much for that, Sam, and hello, good evening to each and every single one of you. My name's Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co. with you until 7 o'clock tonight. I've got to tell you, I'm so pleased that this day is finally upon us, because and I know many of you, was losing the will to live when it came to this budget. But it's done. And I want to know, what do you think to it? Keeping me company to tell me what they think to it, the Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice. Alongside him, the Shadow Environment Secretary, Victoria Atkins. And in addition, we normally only have two people on this panel, but tonight we thought it was justified to have all three. Labour MP Catherine Atkinson, you're all very welcome tonight. As, of course, every single one of you are at home. Join the conversation in all the usual ways. You know how by now. You can email me gbviews@gbnews.com. Go to the website gbnews.com/yoursay. Of course, you can tweet or you can X me. I want to know, what do you think were the good, the bad and the ugly of the budget today? How do you feel? Was it as bad as you feared? Did you find any of it really all that surprising, given all of the relentless leaks we had in the build-up, and of course the catastrophic leak as well of the OBR's forecast, which was leaked in advance of the budget? You couldn't even make this up, ladies and gents. But let me just start with you, Victoria. Just give me, I want all three of you just to give me your top line thoughts of the budget as a whole. And as the programme progresses, we'll get into the kind of minutiae of the policies.
Well, after 6 months of shambolic briefings, this is the budget of broken promises. We have taxes up, unemployment up, inflation up, public debt up, welfare spending up, and growth down. And so I fear this is a budget that will be living with all of us for a very, very long time in a very, very bad way.
Richard Tice?
It was a car crash, the Chancellor's second car crash since she was appointed. And yes, I mean, taxes to a post-war high, and we've got borrowing in this year alone will be £21 billion higher than the OBR forecast just a few months ago. It's a major disincentive to people who work, to people who run small businesses, to farmers, to entrepreneurs. It's a budget for those who are trapped on welfare. There's nothing good about it at all. There's lots of bad, lots of ugly.
Catherine, what do you think?
We saw a budget that tackled the cost of living, that was there to cut waiting lists in our NHS and to bring down borrowing and debt. It is what this country needed. It's what's being delivered.
So are you happy? Because, of course, the Chancellor, she was saying to you guys in advance, it's not pick and mix, it's not Woolworths, you can't just have this and your cola bottles and forget the rest. So are you united, do you think, as a party, across all of these measures that we saw today?
It is a package because we've got some things paying for others, but I think that
paying for shirkers.
Well,
that's what many people will say.
I think that what we saw with the two-child benefit cap being lifted, that's going to be paid for by taxes on online gambling. I think we do need to ensure that we know where things are being paid for. But what I want to see is opportunity for all. And budget's always going to be about choices. And we could have gone back to austerity with the Conservatives and reform the way they would like to do things, or we could have seen reckless borrowing like we would have seen with the Greens. This is a budget to ensure that we do tackle the cost of living as we already have been, and building on some really meaningful differences to people's lives that have already started. So we did see earlier this week with the freeze on rail fares, with the freeze on prescription charges. But what I was particularly pleased to see grown is, again, the uplift on minimum wage and on the state pension, because I want to have more money in people's pockets to spend in our shops, to spend in our restaurants and our pubs. That is what's going to help our local economies.
Some of you who are watching this programme, you might run those small businesses, you might run your restaurants, you might run your pubs. So it's all well and good saying, oh, this money's going to pour into hospitality because people are earning more. If you are one of these small business owners, how do you feel when you hear that? Do you feel, yes, my profits are about to be boosted, or do you sit there with your head in your hands and go, Michelle, what is everyone talking about? My wage bill will now spiral out of control. In a minute, I'll be talking to someone from the Treasury, and we'll get into some of this stuff. But Victoria, one of the things that astonished me was that you've got all of these politicians, everyone's making their way to Parliament. Meanwhile, you've got farmers on the streets, absolutely furious, having been told literally late last night that now they wouldn't be allowed to bring vehicles into central London because of disruption reasons. And getting arrested. Farmers getting arrested on the streets of Britain. You were down there.
I was down there for much of the day. And first of all, the reason that farmers are leaving their farms to come to London to protest is not because they're left-wing activists that like protesting every weekend. It's because of the family farm and the family business taxes, which are doing so much damage already to those businesses before it's even come into force in April. They were coming here today hoping to get the Chancellor to listen to their worries, their concerns, and there are some very tragic human stories behind this as well. And they were given permission to do this on the 14th of November. That permission was withdrawn late yesterday afternoon. So these farmers, who, by the way, have been travelling from all over the country, carried on their journeys, came into London, protested peacefully, as they always do. But what was really, really infuriating was that as I was coming out of Westminster Tube today to go and meet the farmers, I saw that we had the usual campaigner with his loudspeaker on Parliament Square. He's there every week shouting his inanities. Shouting his inanities every week. He was allowed to do that today. Farmers weren't. So there are some very serious questions for the Met. I'm going to be writing to the Commissioner to demand answers on this, because we need to know why that decision changed between the 14th of November and yesterday afternoon. It's not right.
Why? Because they weren't carrying pro-Palestine flags.
Yeah.
That's the reason they weren't. If they had been there to been allowed, Michelle, you should add that to your letter, Victoria. It's an absolute disgrace why they were prevented from carrying out lawful, peaceful protests. The last time they came to town, they left the streets cleaner than they found them.
No, they should protest on all the streets up and down the country every single day. You'd save council tax. You'd save a fortune in your council tax. This is pretty shameful, and it's a terrible look for this government when you've got hard-working farmers being denied the opportunity to peacefully protest, whilst you're simultaneously saying that you are on the side of working people.
I would be very surprised if the government had any direct input into decisions about what protests can and can't go ahead. That would be it's a matter for the police to police protests, and absolutely everyone has a right to peacefully protest, but they've always got to do it within the rules. I've got no idea why the rules changed in relation to today.
But doesn't it concern you as the government of this country, when you've got your farmers and you know this is happening, you can see it's happening, you can hear it's happening, and you will have witnessed it, some of it with your own eyes, I'm sure, as you were going into Parliament. Doesn't it concern you? Don't you feel like this government should be demanding answers from the likes of Metropolitan Police and perhaps telling them, look, these are not the optics that we want to be seeing. Explain yourselves.
I think that the police should stay operationally independent from government, but I do agree that you always want to see peaceful protest being allowed where it can be, and we should always be listening to those that want to raise their concerns with us.
I regret to say, Michelle, this was a political decision by the head of the Metropolitan Police, who must now explain himself. He didn't want this budget day to be surrounded, for the whole of Parliament to be surrounded by tractors. That's the bottom line, and he needs to explain himself to the British people very, very quickly.
The scenes were remarkable, you know. When Rachel Reeves left Downing Street, she literally left to a chorus of boos from the farmers that had assembled there. Look, coming up after the break, I'll speak to someone from the Treasury. We'll delve into a lot more of these policies. And crucially, I want to bring you into the conversation as well. So tell me, how are you feeling about the budget at home? Has it worked out well for you? Was it as bad as you expected? Was it better than you expected? Are you sitting there delighted tonight by what you've heard? Get in touch all the usual ways. I'll bring you into the conversation after the break.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Dewbs, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk
No,
now?
that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, with you till 7 o'clock tonight on Budget Day. Finally, it's been and gone almost. I'm joined by my panel that will also be with me until 7 o'clock tonight. And in a second, I shall cross live to Secretary of the Treasury, Dan Tomlinson. In fact, I can cross to him live now. Good evening to you, Dan. Let me start by just rewinding to the start of this budget. It was absolutely chaotic, catastrophic, calamitous, whatever word you want to choose. We've had weeks, if not months, of leaks here, there and everywhere, pitch rolling, you name it. Then today, just before the actual announcement of the budget from the Chancellor herself, we then had the whole OBR forecast leaked. I mean, you really couldn't have done a worse job with this budget if you tried, could you?
Well, hold off. The OBR, as it should be, is entirely independent from the government. Of course, it is extremely disappointing that they published their economic and fiscal outlook on their website before the Chancellor delivered her statement today. They've said they're going to review it and look at what happened. And my gosh, they should, because that was a really big mistake by them. But let's be clear. They're entirely independent from the government. They adjudicate our forecasts. They're not part of the Treasury. And so, yes, it shouldn't have happened. And I think it's right that they're going to look into it because it was a big mistake.
Should the person responsible be fired?
I'm not going to comment on that. I think it's right for him to look into it. It's right for the institution to look into it. And of course, then we have to make sure they improve and that this doesn't happen again.
So let me take you back to the autumn budget that we had from Rachel Reeves, and I want to give you a quote from something that Rachel Reeves said, and I quote directly. She says, "I've come to the conclusion that extending the threshold freeze would hurt working people. It would take more money out of their pay slips." Now, today, we saw those tax thresholds extended again, way beyond what anybody was expecting. The Leader of the Opposition, Kemi Badenoch, she's described your budget today as basically a budget for Benefits Street that's tackling the working people, taking from them to give to essentially what some people would call scroungers.
Right, there's lots of different things in there. On the decision around the income tax thresholds, well, let's be clear that they have been frozen now for a long time under the Tories in terms of the years of freezes. And yes, at the very end of the decade, we have made the decision to extend that freeze. And I'm not going to shy away from the fact that that does mean that we're asking workers to contribute more. But we have tried in this budget incredibly hard to make sure that we minimise that contribution as much as possible through making other changes in our tax system, changes to the tax system that have been left untouched by chancellors time and time again, to reform it, to bring down some of those costs of the reliefs, to make it fit for the modern world in terms of how all of our habits are shifting online, for example. And because we've made those decisions, we've limited the impact on working people up and down the country, and I think that's the right thing to do. And then you also mentioned there the decision around the two-child benefit limit. I think that was the right thing to do by the Chancellor today to lift that limit. I grew up in a household where we basically had very little money. I was homeless for a time as a kid, living in emergency and temporary accommodation, had free school meals throughout my childhood, and there were 3 of us in our family. And I have a personal experience of how difficult it is to get by when families fall on hard times. And that policy is not about adults, it's about kids. And it's about making sure that kids have got the best chance to start in life, whichever family they're in, whatever's happened to their parents' circumstances. And look, it's going to reduce the number of kids in child poverty by 500,000 in one budget. That's the biggest reduction in child poverty we've seen in any budget this century. And I think that's the right thing to do.
But it's also a measure that we know from the polls is hugely unpopular. Something like 60% of people are against this measure. One MP, Nick Timothy, Tory MP, he was flagging the number of families that will be receiving this benefit that are foreign nationals. Why are British nationals funding something that essentially is going to become an international welfare state?
Look, what we're doing for people up and down the country in this budget is taking action on the cost of living. People have said for too long that energy bills are too high, and this government is taking decisive action at this budget. So from April next year, energy bills will be lower by £100
Yeah, this is
for every
fascinating,
single
but that's
family.
not my
That's
question.
the right thing to do, and it's
That's not
helping
my
families
question,
with the
Dan.
cost of living.
That's really interesting, and thank you for pointing that out. And yes, you indeed are doing those things to the energy bills, but that wasn't my question. My question was, people are asking, why is the welfare system becoming an international welfare state?
This government is actually going to take action when it comes to people coming to the UK because of the welfare system, a system that was left totally failing under the previous government, a system that didn't support people, a system that didn't make sure that people who could work would get into work. And that's why we're changing our welfare system to make it both fairer when it comes to not being that incentive factor for migrants coming to the UK. And we're making other reforms too to make the system fairer. For example, the Motability system, where people who receive personal independence payments, they can use those payments to get leased cars. But under the Tories, they could get expensive leased cars, totally tax-free. You and I, when we go out and buy a car, we pay VAT on that sale. The system until now, people who got expensive cars on those systems and were paying an upfront charge to do so, they weren't paying VAT, and we've reformed that. That's going to save £300 million for the taxpayer. I don't think people should be getting tax-free expensive cars, and we've stopped that. I think that's the right thing to do.
Answer my question with respect. The Tory MP Nick Timothy, he says that 341,735 foreign-born families will benefit from the decision to lift the two-child cap. This is a policy that you've announced today, so I'm asking you again for the third time, why are British nationals that work funding what is seeming to many to be an international welfare state. How is that fair to the viewers that are watching this programme?
There will be hundreds of thousands of British nationals in this country who are in work and who are receiving universal credit who are going to benefit from this change. And I want kids from all backgrounds in this country to be able to grow up with the ability to have enough money in their family to manage the cost of living, to not live in a difficult financial situation, and to have the best start in life. And I'm going to defend that policy because it's the right thing to do. It's right to lift kids from all backgrounds out of child poverty, because in the end we all pay the price if people are growing up in difficult financial circumstances where their parents can't make ends meet. All of the evidence is clear. If people have got enough money to get by, then the kids have a better start in life, they have a better education, they're more likely to earn more when they're older. That's the right thing to do. And I think it's good that the government today has made that decision alongside loads of other things in terms of investing in our NHS, investing in our public services, trying to turn our economy around and get wages rising and interest rates falling so the cost of a mortgage is cheaper for people too.
Yeah, I mean, of course, you'll be familiar with some of the OBR stats that was contained within that forecast today as well. So things like growth, fair enough, that's been forecasted up this year, but all the subsequent years it's been forecasted down. We've got ourselves in a situation now where we're hitting that 2% inflation target now is going to be much later than previously anticipated and hoped for. But look, we talk about working people. In order to be a working person, one has to have a job. So let me just ask you this question. Are you pro-jobs? Because we've seen quite a few measures now that make small business people really panic when it comes to, number one, hiring their staff, and number two, actually kind of retaining the staff and being able to retain the staff that they have. I'm referring to things like the hike in the minimum wage. I'm also talking about the employers' rights bills, day one rights, etc. How is all that conducive to a situation where you've already got AI threatening the jobs of many industries? Talk me through that.
We do have to get the balance right. Since the election, the number of people in employment has increased. At the same time, we had in our manifesto, we had clear commitments around the national living wage, and I think it is good for people who are on low wages that that's gone up from £12.21 to £12.71 next year. That will help them with the cost of living. And then in terms of businesses, one of the changes that I've been working on as a Treasury Minister in recent weeks is the change to business rates. I know that's a really big cost for businesses up and down the country, and we've reformed that. We're giving permanently lower tax rates to businesses who operate on the high street, retail, hospitality and leisure businesses. The tax rate for the smallest businesses who are on the high street is going to be the lowest it's been since 1991, and I really think that that will help those small businesses. It is the right thing to do, because in the end the small businesses up and down the country are the backbone of our economy, and with those business rates reforms I really think that we are going to be able to offer that support to people for the long term.
And you're talking about reforms, let me ask you this, have you actually got the courage to make welfare reforms? Because also today the OBR have forecasted eye-watering sums of money now when it comes to the growth in the cost of the welfare state. Have you actually got it within you as a Labour Party to get a hold of this and properly get a grip and reform welfare spending?
Yes, because we have to. Because this system, the system that we inherited from the last lot, is totally and utterly failing. We've talked about the fact it leaves too many kids in families where they don't have enough money to eat, but it also leaves too many people in a situation where they're too sick and not able to work. Yes, we've got to invest in our NHS to help people with their health, but we've also got to keep going with reforming and improving our welfare system. We made some changes last year that the OBR say will support more people into work. We've made those changes to stop the tax-free cars as well today, but there's definitely more to do. We've commissioned a previous Labour Minister to do a quick review into how we can get more young people into work. And then Stephen Timms, he's a Minister in the Department for Work and Pensions, he's looking at what we can do to reform personal independence payments. Look, I totally agree with you, and I'm happy to come back on your programme in future months and talk about what we're doing to make sure that we can control welfare spending, because it is right that we do so, because taxpayers up and down the country want to see a government that's making sure that we're looking after every single penny, whether it's on welfare or on public services.
And I do appreciate you actually coming on to the programme, Dan, because today the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, she refused yet again to take a question from GB News viewers. We are the highest watched news channel in the country, but for some reason the Chancellor turns a blind eye to our viewers. Why?
Well, I've been coming on GB News a lot. I don't know if any of your people who are watching the programme now also watch the programme at PMQs. I am trying my best to come on a regular basis and talk to your viewers. It's important to make sure that people get to hear from the government, because otherwise they won't be able to hear about things like the £150 off the energy bills, the investment in the NHS, the steps we're taking to get borrowing down. I want to communicate that message on your channel, and I'm happy to have been with you today to do so.
And we're grateful to have you. You might want to have a little word in the ear of your boss. Dan Tomlinson, though, thank you very much for your time and company tonight. We very much appreciate it. Look, I'm going to take a quick break, and when I come back, I'll get panel reaction and yours at home as well.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. A frost-free night to come, but it will remain overcast and drizzly throughout the next few days. The winds will also start to pick up. That's because of this area of low pressure out in the Atlantic. Ahead of that, a series of weather front will bring thicker cloud and some spells of wet weather, and that rain will push into southeastern areas through this evening. It will be relatively light, but it's going to turn quite damp wherever you are. We'll continue to see further pulses of rain moving in from the west. This could turn heavy across parts of Scotland as well as northwestern England, but as I said, it's going to be a much milder night tonight. An early minimum across the southeast, temperatures closer to double digits to start the day here. Now, looking further north and west, this is where the winds will start to pick up throughout Thursday. So temperatures around 11 or 12 degrees across the Western Isles and the Highlands, but a brisk southerly wind will make it feel a little bit chillier than that. And there's going to be a lot of cloud around, some wet weather too, particularly over high ground, western facing hills in particular. The high ground of Wales also seeing some drizzly outbreaks of rain through Thursday. Southeastern areas should remain largely dry through the day, but there's going to be very little in the way of sunshine, and it is going to be a breezy day. In fact, quite a windy day across western coasts, particularly northwestern areas of Scotland. Now, there will be some sunshine poking out by the end of the day across Northern Ireland and the far northwest of Scotland, so we'll feel a little bit better here, but here is where the strongest winds are, and there could be some blustery showers too. And we do have a wind warning in force through Thursday night into Friday lunchtime. Gusts in excess of 75 miles per hour are possible across Western Isles on Friday morning. And we'll see some heavy pulses of rain across parts of Wales into southeastern areas. That rain could linger into the weekend. There is some uncertainty on that, but wherever you are, it is expected to get colder once again throughout the weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Britain, for making us the fastest growing news website in the UK. We're truly humbled, and we couldn't have done it without you.
Good evening. This is the latest AI travel news from GBnews.com. The M74 southbound is restricted after junction 14 due to a collision. Traffic is backed up on the M4 eastbound between junction 30 Cardiff Gate and junction 28 Tredegar Park. Congestion on the A50 eastbound between the A500 and the A520 junction causes delays in Stoke-on-Trent. A collision on the A1 southbound in Hertfordshire leads to lane closures between the M25 and the A5135. And on the trains, expect delays with cross-country services between Bournemouth and Brockenhurst. For more travel news, go to gbnews.com.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries, all sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Sunny skies for much of Spain on Thursday, not particularly warm, however. More wet weather to come for parts of Italy and some warm winds blowing across the Greek islands. Reasonably warm in the Canary Islands with a chance of 1 or 2 showers. Fine and sunny, as I said, over most of Spain, but it is on the cool side here. Cold winds bringing plenty of showers to Sardinia and Sicily. Some heavy rain heading to Athens, but the Greek islands further east staying dry and sunny. Santorini, though, seeing showers this weekend.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co. with me, Michelle Dewberry, Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, the Shadow Environment Secretary, Victoria Atkins, and the Labour MP, Catherine Atkinson. I was just joined there by someone from the Treasury. I found that quite frustrating, the fact that I was trying to put to him, Richard, the concern that many of the viewers watching this at home will have, that there's a sense that we're not only funding a welfare state that's getting out of control, but it's somehow becoming an international welfare state. I've got to tell you, I don't actually believe I got the answer fully to my question.
He didn't answer your question. Reform are very clear. If you come to live in this great country to work, then the clue's in the name work. And our policy is that there should be no welfare paid to overseas nationals whatsoever. It's as simple as that. It's welfare should be for British people who are genuinely in need, who want to work, who are looking for work, and that's the right thing. And I think that's what your viewers and listeners want to hear.
Brian says, Michelle, I'm shouting at my television. Why does everyone keep saying we're tackling the cost of living? He says, this is absolute rubbish. Just living has got even more expensive for anyone, it feels, unless they're on benefits. What do you say to Brian?
This was a pro-aspiration, pro-growth, pro-fairness budget. What kills ambition is stagnant wages, crumbling infrastructure and leaving children languishing in poverty, because then we do not benefit from their talents. I think it's absolutely the right thing to do to be tackling the cost of living. But we were elected to make sure that work pays. We've seen bigger increases in 10 months in wages than we saw in 10 years under the Conservatives. And I think people should be paid enough to live on, because when they do have that extra money, they do spend it on our high streets and in our local areas. But it's really important that we ensure that work pays, and that is what this government is doing by ensuring that we have wages going up faster than costs.
But Catherine, there's no growth in the last 3 months. Employers are stopping hiring people because the costs are too great, the risks are too great, and there's almost 200,000 jobs have been destroyed on the altar of the last budget, let alone this one. I mean, it's a catastrophe. It's heading south.
The last budget, not only did it deliver the £24 billion that we needed for the NHS, we then saw that this country had the fastest growth in the G7 for the first 6 months of this year. And we have seen record investment. And I want everyone to benefit from that record investment, which is why it is important that we have things happening, like when our energy bills land on our doormats in April, we will see, on average bills, are saving £150. That is really important for people, because we need to see their costs coming down and we need to continue to see wages going up.
Meanwhile, back on planet Earth, the Conservatives are the only party that believe that we should maintain the two-child benefit cap, because, like the great British public, we understand that difficult choices are made in families day in, day out about the size of the family. Reform, I'm afraid, is also apparently in favour of lifting this cap.
And what that means, there's a working condition to it.
What this means is it costs £3 billion. What that will mean is that a family of 6 will see an extra £14,000 in benefits because of this. And I just think that sends the wrong message out. There'll be people at home watching this thinking the cost of food is going up. My job stability is under threat because employers simply cannot afford the national insurance hike, the increase to the living wage. We all want people to be paid properly, but there is no such thing as government money. It's all paid for by taxpayers. And we know that 400,000 jobs have now been lost since the last budget. So this is the reality of Labour's economic policies. Jobs cut, taxes up, people being unable to afford the things that they need day-to-day living, food prices included.
We have more jobs that have been created, over 100,000 more jobs. But it doesn't surprise me that what I think is a good budget differs from what those in Reform and the Conservatives think is a good budget. When the leader of Reform said that the best Conservative budget since 1986 was the Truss mini-budget, which is unfunded tax cuts, crashed our economy and meant that mortgages spiralled.
So there is a bigger crash coming because of the last 2 budgets than anything that has gone before. I promise you, trouble is coming because of what this Chancellor has done.
After the last budget, we have seen 5 interest rate cuts. Now that
is the Bank of England independent? You can't claim success for that when you say the Bank of England's independent.
That
Either
is
it is
what
or it
happened
isn't.
after the last budget, and that is mortgages
Answer his point
lower.
about the interest rates, because he does raise that, because when they are going the wrong direction, apparently it's nothing to do with you, but when it's going in the right direction, then it is to do with you.
We need to ensure, which are the fiscal discipline of this Chancellor does, that borrowing is going down, that debt is going down, and we have seen inflation coming down and wages going up. And as a result of the economic picture that we have had 5 interest rate cuts, which are lower mortgages for
in the
people.
Chamber, Catherine, I had to correct the Minister, right, who's partly responsible for this budget, who did not know that the borrowing this year alone will be 21 billion higher, and he did not know that in the next 4 years it will be 63 billion higher. If you borrow more, that means it's gone up. That means more borrowing, not less.
I think we absolutely need to ensure that borrowing comes down, because £1 in every 10 is being spent on servicing our debt. And that is the legacy that we had after the last Conservative government. But that is why the fiscal rules are so important. But I think people
just bringing this back to people that are watching at home. In the Red Book, the Treasury's own document, it says on page 41-42 that real household disposable income, in other words, the money that we have spare at the end of the week to spend a little bit of money on the things we would like to spend our money on, that is going to be lower over this 5-year period, the scorecard period, than over the last 10 years. So the reality is this country cannot afford labour. If you're a trade union official, if you like going on strike, this is the government for you, because you'll get a pay rise and they're going to make life easier to enable you to go on strike more often. But if you are in the private sector, if you run your own business, if you're self-employed, if you work for a business, this budget today has just heaped on £26 billion more taxes on us all. These businesses are going to struggle to keep employing people, and we know they are already laying people off.
I mean, if you think people are going to have amnesia about what we saw over the 14 years of Conservative government, people's memories are not that short.
We halved the public deficit from that which we inherited in 2010. We saw 800 jobs created every single day, including during the pandemic, as opposed to the 400,000 jobs that have been lost since last budget. And what is more, we handed to you inflation lower than it is today. It was bang on target. We saw the economy improving, and we saw growth improving.
You trashed our economy, you trashed our public services, and we are having to clear up the mess.
Blimey, if this is mess clearing up, I'd hate to see you trying to make a mess. I've got to say, that's what some of my viewers might be thinking. Andrew has got in touch and says, Michelle, we've run a successful family hotel business now for 35 years. We feel like we're recently dying from increasing taxation, ever-growing wage bills and massive price increases. We're sitting here with our heads in our hands and our passports, he says, are ready. We are off as soon as we can sell up. And guess what? We shall be taking our capital with us. Keep your thoughts coming in. I'll speak to an economist as well, just to let you know some more of how this will all be impacting you after the break. I'm Michelle Dewberry. This is Dewbs & Co with you.
Hello everyone, Patrick Christie is here. GB News, Britain's news channel.
Access the stories that matter to you. Take the GB News family with you on any device, and as long as you have an internet connection. Tune in to GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel. At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There, you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power?
Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber.
Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics.
We'll see where this ruling takes us.
These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
Decisions made in Washington aren't just shaping America, they're shaping Britain too. From migration to global security, from crime to health. Whatever happens in the White House today
will be felt in your town or city tomorrow.
That's why The Late Show is live from Washington, D.C.
Cutting through the politics to show you what it all means for Britain.
The Late Show live every night at midnight.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. With you, Toll 7, Richard has gotten in touch and says, Michelle, the only headline for me from the budget today is in capitals. He puts this, so I know you mean business when you're writing capital letters. He says, why bother to work? ? I'm joined now by the Chief Economist at NetWealth, Dr. Gerard Lyons. Good evening to you. Viewers watching and listening to this programme. We've spoken a lot about things like salary threshold freezing. There was all kind of measures, things like salary sacrifices being capped and all the rest of it. Many of these things seem way off into the distance. How do you think that consumers and people sitting at home watching this will feel the pinch from the budget or the benefit from the budget today?
Well, I think people will feel the pinch the further ahead one goes in this Parliament, because effectively the budget confirmed that we're a high-spending, high-tax and high-borrowing economy. But the spending increases, while they continue throughout the whole Parliament, they particularly were evident in the next few years, and you've mentioned the people receiving more from the child benefit cap being lifted. But for most people, the average taxpayer, the tax increases announced today are going to hit later in this Parliament. So the way I would describe this budget is using the word bad. It was bad for the public finances. I thought it was bad for the economy. And I thought it was bad for the incentives it embeds. That being said, the markets were relatively relieved this afternoon, the financial markets. And they were relieved because the fiscal gap, the black hole, as it was called, was not as bad as they had been led to believe. And also, they were relieved that the Chancellor decided to boost her headroom from under 10 billion to 22 billion pounds, which reduces the chances of a Groundhog Day next year. So the markets were relieved. But once you go into the Red Book and into the details of the budget, the outcome is not so good. And I think people, certainly in the markets, are starting to think negatively about the longer term consequences, because public spending is not under control. And that, in terms of the general public, means higher taxes to come.
And of course, if anyone's sitting there thinking, do you know what, it's fine, I'll go to the pub, I'll drown my sorrows, I'll have a few cheeky cigarettes, even those things are not left untouched.
Yeah, well, basically, spending has not been kept under control. Borrowing is already very high, although the latest borrowing figures in terms of gilt sales weren't as bad as some people feared. So basically, to make up the gap, you have to increase taxes. Now, in the Red Book, and earlier this afternoon, the Chancellor was trying to claim that 9 out of 10 people would benefit from the budget. But when you actually look at the detail, actually, the tax increases are across the spectrum. And it's either if you're receiving welfare or there's an implied benefit from public services in terms of the energy benefit, she's assuming that will benefit people. But the reality is, coming back to your question, higher taxes are hitting those people in work. The budget is not incentivising work. And as you've asked in your question, there's also other indirect taxes, whether it's on beer or other things.
Interesting stuff. That's Dr. Gerard Lyons there, the Chief Economist at NetWealth. Thank you for your time. Look, I've got my panel still here with me, of course. Deputy Leader of Reform UK, Richard Tice, Shadow Environment Secretary, Victoria Atkins, and Labour MP, Catherine Atkinson. Ron has got in touch and says, Michelle, I think he feels a bit demoralised tonight. He says, I didn't hear the word farmers mentioned in the budget at any stage. Obviously, they just don't matter. He says, Peter said, I do feel that some of the treatment towards farmers is coming from number 10. These things do indeed trickle down. Jan says the farmers have every single right to protest, and Jess says the photograph of that farmer, Michelle, being handcuffed is terrifying. It's scary to think that this is acceptable at all. You make the point, of course, it's fine to block the streets when it comes to pro-Palestine marches and all the rest of it. That economist, he summed up your budget with one word: bad. Well, what do you think?
Well, you'll be unsurprised to hear that I disagree. I think it is the right thing to do to be addressing the cost of living, to be investing in the NHS, and to be bringing down debt and borrowing. I think we saw under the Conservatives taxes rise and services get cut. That's exactly what we're seeing from reform in councils. I think how we would expect
we're saving money,
either
we're doing
of those.
a great job.
Well, that's not the case. And certainly in Derbyshire, they're putting council tax up to the maximum, despite having promised going into the
You do realise the process takes place in January. We're not in January.
They have already
Can I just
said
ask you a
they're going
serious
to the
question?
max.
If we're here in a year's time, right, and there's been no growth in the economy, do you think the Chancellor should resign? Because she talked about growth, 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 and if we get no growth or a recession, surely she's failed.
What we're seeing already in reform councils up and down the country.
That we're saving money, we're doing a great job.
Absolutely not. That you are cutting services, just like we saw under the Conservatives, and that you have already said you will be putting up council tax to the max, in direct contradiction to what you promised going into the election.
I mean, you can blather and bleat away, but you're lying.
In Derbyshire County Council, they have said that they will be putting up council tax to the max, and they are definitely cutting services. And that is exactly what we saw from the Conservatives, and that's not surprising considering how many former Conservatives are in your party now. And when we are seeing resignation after resignation, we've got another by-election costing thousands of pounds.
How many Labour councillors have been suspended?
Costing thousands of pounds to the taxpayer because they cannot stick it out. But they're certainly not delivering what they said they were doing.
So why are we winning council by-elections week in, week out, and Labour are losing them? Maybe because people actually prefer reform, and that's why we're leading in the polls.
I think people are seeing that I do think you're on a bit of a sticky wicket when you're talking about councillors having to resign, because when you actually look at the Labour councillors that have had to do the same and some of the reasons why, I think that makes for quite eye-watering, eyebrow-raising stuff, as my viewers can Google and find out for themselves. Look, is it all your fault? The Tories. Let's just get to the nuts and bolts in the last 20 seconds.
We've got to, so what was there were many things that were extremely disappointing about this budget today, not least the Chancellor's complete failure to axe the family farm and family business tax that will do so much damage. But it is also this inability to take responsibility for their own choices, and I very much hope that people will see this budget for what it is, as I say, a budget of broken promises.
Many of you are getting in touch. This two-child cap, it is not a popular thing.
It's not.
I can tell you, I'm looking at all of your contacts coming in. By the way, if you want to find out how you'll be impacted by today's budget, get your phone out, scan this QR code, and it'll tell you all the details that you need to know. But there you go. For now, thank you very much to my panel. Thank you for your company at home. Have a great night. Don't drink and smoke too much. It'll cost you a fortune. See you tomorrow night.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest GB News weather update, brought to you from the Met Office. A frost-free night to come, but it will remain overcast and drizzly throughout the next few days. The winds will also start to pick up. That's because of this area of low pressure out in the Atlantic. Ahead of that, a series of weather front will bring thicker cloud and some spells of wet weather, and that rain will push into southeastern areas through this evening. It will be relatively light, but it's going to turn quite damp wherever you are. We'll continue to see further pulses Chances of rain moving in from the west. This could turn heavy across parts of Scotland as well as northwestern England. But it's, as I said, it's going to be a much milder night tonight. An early minimum across the southeast. Temperatures closer to double digits to start the day here. Now, looking further north and west, this is where the winds will start to pick up throughout Thursday. So temperatures around 11 or 12 degrees across the Western Isles and the Highlands, but a brisk southerly wind will make it feel a little bit chillier than that. And there's going to be a lot of cloud around, some wet weather too, particularly over high ground, western facing hills in particular. The high ground of Wales also seeing some drizzly outbreaks of rain through Thursday. Southeastern areas should remain largely dry through the day, but there's going to be very little in the way of sunshine, and it is going to be